Welcome everybody. With me, I have Hillel. Hillel, do you want to introduce yourself? Give a little bit of just a little background about yourself, what you do, just a little shilling.
Nah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. So my first question is, how did you actually get introduced to Neovim generally? Here, I actually think I know the answer already because I did my research as an interviewer. My understanding is your first introduction to Neovim was the introduction of asynchronous jobs and terminals, and you thought, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. I'd be interested in checking out what I can do with those.
Actually, I think it was probably actually increment. I think it might have been incremental command actually.
Okay.
Like I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw it. No, because I remember I wrote a demo for command like when it came out, so I was already using it before then. I
Oh.
think it was no. It must have been that I was already using MacVim at the time,
Mm.
and switched to NeoVim for. Let me check the old NeoVim release because I remember I think it was like specifically one thing I saw that looked kind of interesting to me that made me switch.
Nice.
Um, NeoVim releases. Ba, 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 ba. Oh, hey! Wow, it looks like there's a new Neovim release, 0.7.
What a coincidence. It's kind of fun, actually, that one of the releases was the reason that you thought about switching, and now we're chatting about the newest release.
Yeah, was it 0Vim 0.
Good chance it would be like point 0.4. I know that was one of the really long
No, because I'm
releases.
no, because it
Maybe it
must
was
have been
before
no,
that.
because I remember I used it like when because I no, because it definitely like when I switched to Windows like in like 2018 for a brief time to like play around with it. I was using Neovim on Windows, so it must have been like
Mm.
0.3 at the very earliest.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I think it was probably that there was a plugin I wanted to play with or something that
Yeah.
okay, it was long enough ago that I legitimately just do not remember
Nice.
like how I got into Neovim. I know I was using MacVim for a while, and it was possibly like a plugin I wanted to check out, or I was just
Yeah.
curious to see like what made this Vim different in some way, or maybe it was just Emacs envy. I don't know.
No, that's exciting. It's fun to hear too that you've sort of been around for so long that it's just become the thing that you use, which is a really cool, I think, sort of aspect of Neovim now.
It might have been because I remember also there was a time when I was on just VS Code. I switched from I think it might have been that I switched from regular Vim to VS Code, and
Oh,
then when
okay.
I was switching back to Vim because I decided I didn't like VS Code that much. Like,
Mm,
I mean,
good choice.
it's fine. I do use it all the time still, like when
Yeah.
pairing with people. But I missed having Vim, so I just when I switched back, I was like, I'm just gonna try out NeoVim,
Yeah.
and it was a good choice.
Yeah. Next time you have to warn me when you're going to say VS because we always bleep that out on the stream. We don't have vulgarity. So it's VS. So,
So yeah, just to
yeah.
summarize that thing, I do not remember how I got. I legitimately do not remember how I got into
Yeah.
NeoVim.
No, that's great. That's a fun answer too. I love it. I think an interesting sort of question then on the flip side, right? So instead of thinking about how you got started, if there was one feature you could have in Neovim right now, what do you think that feature would be?
Honestly, my first instinct, more than
Yeah.
anything else, like the first thing that just comes to my
Yeah.
like my chest just like, crushes my heart, as in like the sheer like this must happen.
Yeah.
A version of the jump list that doesn't take that only looks at files and doesn't take like move by paragraph or move by search, because so often I realize that you want to go back one buffer,
Yeah.
and I normally just hit like control I or control, but I've also been using like searching and like
Mm-hmm.
the next paragraph motions which add to the jump list. So every time I
Yep.
hit that, like that's
Yeah, like a
probably the thing that
file
I would,
list.
yeah, like a file list in addition to a jump list. And I think
Yeah.
more than anything else is what I want. And
Yeah.
there's probably a plugin that does that for me already, and I should probably look for it right now. I'm googling. What is it? Vim file list. There's probably even a Vim plugin for that.
Yeah.
You know what's actually really interesting is like finding plugins for
Mm-hmm.
like certain things is actually really hard on Vim. Like one
Yeah.
thing I was trying to find for a long ass time when I was like before like the Lua stuff came around was a Vim library to handle parsing YAML files for use in Vim plugins, which
Mm.
you cannot find that because anything about Vim is going to be about how you read YAML files as a like
Right.
in your buffer versus how do you like import it. So what I had to do is I had to take like the YAML files and convert them to JSON, then read in the JSON.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds about right though. That's
Vim
do
file
you know
history.
Control 6? I don't know if you know that one. That's alternate buffer. So it takes you to the last buffer you were in.
Yeah, I use that, but sometimes you want to go back two
Right.
buffers, in which
Sometimes
case
you want to go back, right, like the
yeah,
jump list. Yeah,
I think
no.
I actually have like control like that mapped to \w in
Okay.
my Vim. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Okay, well, no, that's a good
Yeah.
feature idea. I like it. Maybe we should make it, you know?
Yeah. Wink, wink.
Yeah, that would be a cool one. All right, here we go. I'm ready. Okay, so
But that's like there's probably like more interesting features I could ask. Like that's like it's a nice to have, but it's not like as transformative as say like Lua is
Right.
or like reverse conceal, etc. So
no, that's good though.
yeah.
Because people always ask for those already, so it's good to think of other ones.
Hmm.
Where would you like to see Neovim as a whole? Sort of like as a program, as a library, as a like whatever you sort of picture Neovim as in 5 years from now.
Hmm. So in 5 years, I think most of the tools that we have
Mm-hmm.
are really focused on just writing code as like just a bunch of text and
Mm-hmm.
try to sort of see a program as more than that as the code, or trying to see like structured information as more than that as like the information itself is
Yeah.
only really a thing pursued heavily in IDs. Not even VS Code does it, although they do a little bit more than like Vim does.
Yeah.
And I always keep going back to IDEs to try things like the Smalltalk IDE or like Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Bleep, etc. Basically going back to like the proper ones that like actually seriously try to like make a full integrated language. And I always go,
Right.
and then I always like love the things that you can do with them, and then I leave because their text editing sucks. And then I go back
Yeah.
to Vim.
Yeah, totally.
And one of the really exciting things about, for example, like Glue integration is it sort of helps break one of the things that makes this so hard in Vim, which is just how difficult it is to write in Vim script.
Yeah,
Especially write more complicated logic.
totally.
And that's why we're seeing so much like really cool stuff, like again, Telescope come out for that. And I think my sort of hope for is in like the next 5 years of Neovim is that as it becomes more mature and stabilizes, more work can be put into like supporting and advancing the really wild stuff people could be doing with plugins.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of hoping that like we see some like really killer stuff come out soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like an example of that I like quite a bit is a friend of mine's working on a plugin called refactoring.nvim. And it's basically, do you know Martin Fowler's book, Refactoring?
Yeah.
So like each of the refactorings, right, is like a particular thing, right? Like inline var, right? So it would be sweet if we had a library that used tree sitter that could implement a bunch of the at least implementable. Some of them are not like, they're not automatable at all, right? You like have to use a human for now at least to figure those things out. But if you wanted to do like inline var, you could select something and you could inline var that and use tree sitter to like do that. And so you could always have the same shortcut regardless of the language. Like to add a language, all you'd have to do is add some tree sitter queries. So I think there's like that kind of idea of like more than just text, right? Understanding it as code is also super exciting to me. And I hope we make a lot of really cool progress in the next, 5 years about something like that as well.
I think I can give you two examples off the top of my head
Sweet.
of like things I'd like to see.
Yeah.
A plugin where you could hover over, where you could highlight regular expressions different from other strings in the same code base.
Yep.
And then hover over a regular expression to show you a guide to it.
Yeah.
Or to show you metadata on it.
I think that actually I just saw something about that on Reddit. I'll see if I can dig up the link later,
Okay.
but it was like regexplainer.nvim or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing I want to see, well, given that like you only have one thing to do, is, for example, the ability to syntax highlight, say, a LaTeX file based on the LaTeX document type. To, for example, highlight Beamer things differently than, say, like an article.
Yeah.
And I probably won't use it anymore because I've slowly like moved away from using LaTeX. But and honestly, when I do use it, I use it in VS Bleep. But mostly for like the automatic build and stuff. But that's the kind of thing that I think would help a lot with the work I do and with like programming in general. And I think moving away, like the things that Neovim are doing are going to make that more accessible, which I'm excited about. I especially want like better tools to deal with XML because I've started to get like really into XML as a format.
Okay. Yeah. I saw it. You finally found a use for it, is what I heard.
I've actually been finding a lot of uses for it now. One of the actual fun things is that I think that XML is like one of the best formats currently available for storing large amounts of writing.
Oh, interesting.
In a structured way. So as just like one example I've been doing with it, I've just started like I've started like making a list of like really positive memories I have with friends, and I can tag each one with like the friend it is and like the date it happened or like the event. And then because XML is super easy, I can just be like, okay, now give me all the memories that involve this person on this date. Yeah. And that would be really annoying to do in, say, like JSON or like YAML or SQL, because you have that like you have the issue where you can't like have multiple lines in like the same paragraph. You can't have inline markup, etc.
What would you say your favorite customization is that you've done for your own Neovim setup?
I'd say the two like most common like things, just looking at my mappings file, my functions.lua and my mappings.lua.
Yeah.
I'd say the two of the nicest like time savers I've built in that I really am happy about. One of them is a small bookmarking thing I wrote for myself, where I can now just go to any buffer and say save to save that specific like file as a thing to jump to later, and then I can just type to bookmark, and then it auto completes too. So I can just type in like to like L to get to learn TLA, and then just go straight to that thing, and then I can just use Telescope from there.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I've written, this was from Markdown, I wrote a while back, which is I set up a Telescope that just searches my Neovim directory.
Nice.
Yeah, very, very helpful.
Very cool.
It's a function that just drops footnotes into documents. So you know how like how with like Markdown you do the like open bracket caret blah 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 end bracket, and then much later in the file you put like open bracket caret blah 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 end caret colon. I just wrote something that just drops, like if I write like footnote XQC, it would just create that locally, create a same version of the bottom without actually like jumping my cursor.
Oh, nice.
So I can just like say, okay, I'm gonna put a footnote here, just keep writing without having to actually think about it.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Cool. So I'm going to read off to you basically the new features of this release, and then just kind of get your initial response to what you're thinking about those, and we can elaborate on any of them that you want to talk a little bit more about. So the very first one is API auto commands, right? So that includes the ability to pass Lua closures directly to auto commands.
I guess my first thought on that is that will be nice, so I don't have to do the vim.cmd and then just drop the auto command manually. I could just put that as like a thing. And that makes me wonder, because you say it could be an arbitrary Lua closure. So there's probably something really horrifying I'm going to do with that someday. I just don't know what yet.
Yeah. One of the really nice ones for like the fact that you can pass just Lua closures directly is if you want to make an auto command that should only fire once. Like a lot of times you might want to just do like an auto command that checks like the next time you save this file, or like the next time that some like event happens. It's pretty nice for doing those, because you don't have to export some function and like bind a bunch of stuff to it or something like that, which is very nice.
This might actually be helpful with this project I kind of abandoned like 5 years ago, which is to basically create multiple buffers that all map to like a SQL database or something, where you have where the buffers represent data, but they're not being saved to files; they're being saved to like database rows and such. Where you want to be using buff write without buff write being buff write post, and that's really annoying to do in Vim script. So maybe being able to do that like as a little closure could be more useful.
Yeah, totally. The other improvement for it as well is like if you're writing a remote plugin, you no longer have to string interpolate everything to figure out how to make an auto command. You can just like send something over the RPC, so you don't have to be like, oh, where does pattern go in the list of 3 things that I have to write for auto command, right? You pass in pattern as like a keyword argument basically to the RPC.
That might also make like really might make more viable.
Yeah.
Impromptu auto commands where you're just like on a file, just like I'm just gonna write an auto command right now for this like one file to do something every time I save it.
Yeah, because I think that it makes it a lot more accessible, because you're like, oh, I don't have to learn the whole DSL of auto commands. I can just like read the doc for the API command, and then it just does exactly that. And
I don't need to like define a separate function that I then call. Like, I can just put the entire thing on one line in like a single Lua blah 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 command line.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Next up is Lua Keymap API. So there's already been keymaps available, but now you can pass Lua closures directly to keymaps, which is pretty exciting. And so, go ahead.
So for example, I'm looking at my like init.lua right now. I've got mappings.lua. So like I've got, say, vim.api.nvim set keymap \d goes to the string cmd lua required telescope.built-in.find files. I could just replace that entire string with require.find files.
Exactly right.
That seems like it would make things cleaner.
Yeah. And then the other thing about it is there's also this additional layer that we added where we now have vim.keymap as a table. And so you can do vim.keymap.set, and there are some sort of like niceties and foot guns that we try and cover from people that don't make sense to like in the API, that they don't make sense to sort of make some of these assumptions, but in the key maps one, it is.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
actually
so-
another thing I'd like to see Neovim add. The ability for me to add my own DEM modes finally.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
everybody's like, oh yeah, Vim is like the modal outage. Who's the power modal outage editing? And how come I can't add my own modes? There's like 7 modes. Nobody uses 3 of them. Like, when was the last time? When was the last time you used select mode?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Many people don't even know select mode exists, I think. Not even, and they haven't used it. But yeah, the only place I've ever seen it useful for is snippet expansion. But that's a story for a different day, I think.
In
Okay,
Emacs,
then-
you can define your own modes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, then we need to do it now. We can't be.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
behind
Like Vim is like the shining like star of like modal editing, and it's worse than Emacs when it comes to making your own modes.
All right.
Okay.
Someone out here right now listening needs to do that for the next release.
I think there's a plugin that does it for you, but it's like an emulation layer on top. Anyway, next.
Yeah. Next exciting feature, another sort of Luification of the Vim sort of area, is that you can now create your own user commands, right? So not auto commands, but your own user commands with Lua functions and via the RPC now as well. So you can add a user command and pass a Lua like closure or function directly.
So like instead of saying vim.cmd, actually no, wait 1 second. So like, is that similar to getting rid of like the :Lua space blah blah blah, or
so it's actually the thing, like if you wrote a plugin and you define something like, so we have like :telescope, right? Like we create the telescope command. Now instead of having to do that with Vim script or with like vim.command, then we could do vim.api.nvim add user command, I think it is. And we can directly pass in a Lua function that should be called when someone types :telescope, which I think is pretty cool.
that seems pretty nice.
Yeah. So it's just one more like area. One of the big things for this release that's exciting for me is sort of we're getting really close to shaving off all the spots where you have to know Vim DSL to like do something, right? So you no longer have to know, you have to type :command, name of command, space, arguments, whatever that is going to be to define a new command. You can just read the API documentation and call a function to define it.
Yeah. No other comments.
No other comments. Great. I love it.
So wait, you're saying that like you like that I'm not talking. So like,
yeah, I do. It's my interview now. So
okay.
Last sort of big one that I think is pretty exciting is global status line. I don't know if you mentioned earlier when we were chatting that you've seen it. I don't know if you've given it a test drive. Have any thoughts about it?
I've not.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I so far I like it quite a bit. I've been test driving it for a little bit. The only thing is do you use a lot of splits?
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing is like I don't like that I can't tell if a particular file one, I can't always tell exactly which file it is if I have multiple splits. Usually I can tell, but sometimes you have similar files. But the other thing is you can't tell if a file is currently unwritten or not, which sometimes is annoying, like because normally your status line, at least for me, tells me whether a file's unwritten, so I could see if those. But otherwise I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Let's see, what I currently put in my status lines. I mostly have just like the git branch, the mode, where I'm in the file, and also for Markdown and like research text files, I have the word count, and for like talk scripts, I have the word count and roughly how long it'll take me to say it.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's a good idea as well.
Basically, you just take the word count and I divide by like 150.
Yeah. Very cool. And with that, that's basically the last of the sort of major features. And I don't know, any last comments about the release features that you had, or sort of Neovim's current vision, direction, anything you'd like to leave us with?
I mean, you said that you loved it, that I didn't say anything last time, so I'll just keep not saying something.
Very cool. I love it. And we'll end with that. Well,
wait. What about the minor like changes? Are there any like interesting minor ones?
Oh, there are a few minor ones.
Tell me about the minor ones.
Okay, yeah. So one minor one that I think is pretty cool is we've added the ability, depending on your terminal emulator, to detect the difference between Control-I and Tab, which is a long-standing confusion for people because, terminals think that those are the same thing.
Yeah. Another really awful one is that like Control H is backspace.
Yes.
Which is problem because like I have, for example, Control H mapped to go to the next buffer.
Oh yeah.
Set like to move around in splits, and it would just like hit that button, and it would just like backspace me, right? Or so
Yep.
way, I hit backspace like in insert mode, it would just like jump me to another
Right. Yep.
window. So yeah, splitting. I did see that you're giving the ability to finally distinguish between like control sequences and the actual keystrokes. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Another cool small feature that I think is really great for Lua developers is if you type :Lua and then space, if you just put a equals at the beginning of the expression, it will pretty print whatever the result of the expression is now. So you don't have to necessarily have like your own custom like pretty printing function. Like I have capital P. I think you use capital P.
Yeah,
now as well.
you gave me that snippet. So
yeah, so now I mean I still like using it because a lot of times I want to run some pretty printing in the middle of some file, right? And I need to use capital P still. But if you're just sort of like typing something away and running some one-off thing from your command line, you can do :Lua space equals, and it will pretty print those off, which is pretty great, I think.
hooray.
And then I guess like another one that's pretty cool is there's some work being done to do file type detection sort of more extensively and quicker all in Lua.
I saw that because I remember when I moved my when I basically moved to an init.vim on my laptop to an init tool, like the startup time is now like a second.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was like an issue with like say using Lua, and I had no idea what's going on with that. And then like doing a bunch of diagnostics, I found it was the file type.vim was just taking so long to run.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So there's been work done to sort of make that faster, and I think sort of standardize some of that to make it more usable for other people, which is pretty exciting there. Last one as a sort of highlight feature, I would say, is that there's I can't believe I just said highlight feature because it's actually about highlighting. You can actually define all your highlights via Lua now and not have to shell back to vim.command via basically this idea of highlighting having namespaces. It's a long-standing B-Friedel feature that he's been working on, so that's pretty cool too.
Neat. I've definitely messed with highlighting, like mostly to like doing exactly what I needed to do, which is just like get rid of an annoying highlighting thing. But I haven't dived into much more than that. And it seems one of those things that if you know it well, becomes very, very handy.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. Like one thing that I did a while ago, one of my first like Lua projects that I worked on somewhat seriously was I made this like color scheme helper called Color Buddy, and it's not amazing. It works okay, but I've learned a lot about Lua since I first wrote that, so some of it makes me sad, but that's okay. But like, I think it would be cool if we eventually started to make more sort of utilities around highlighting and making like responsive highlighting kind of thing, where this idea, like I basically made like you could define color groups, and a group can like inherit from another group. So if you had like function, you could make bold function, right? And it just inherits like the color of whatever function is, but then you can make it bold, right? And so then if you change your color scheme later, you don't have to remember like the 8 different places that you defined different looking like function color types. It would just be like, oh, I see. I'm going to inherit from function and then be bold. So I think there's more room to like experiment there with making it really easy for people to be like, oh yeah, I just want to make a new color and like make a new group and just like, please highlight that. I don't want to know any crazy like DSL to define this or anything.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. And so with that, I think we are concluding the interview. If you have any final thoughts or where people can follow you or reach you, I think now would be a great time since you didn't introduce yourself at the beginning.
Nah.
Okay, very cool. All right, with that, we'll see everybody later. Thanks.
Bye.